standing at the border of what we used to know. 5 points in the darkness make a different kind of show. They say we're better together, but what do they know when the stars align differently down here below? And maybe we'll rise when we cut all the ties. There's a flag that we fly under our own sky. Remember all the stories that your granddad told about a republic that wouldn't be controlled. Now the suits in the city say we've all been sold, but there's a fire burning that just won't get old. And maybe we'll rise when we cut all the ties. There's a flag that we fly under our own sky. They draw their lines on paper, we draw ours in the sand. Some dreams are getting closer, while some don't understand. Don't understand. The highways stretch forever toward a setting sun, where cattle graze on memories of battles won. They say unity's the answer, but maybe we're done with playing by the rules of the chosen one. Oh, maybe we'll rise when we cut all the ties. There's a flag that we fly under our own sky. Maybe we'll rise when we cut all the ties. There's a flag that we fly under our own sky. Our own sky. Our own sky.
Hey, good evening, everyone. It is that time again, right? That time when we get together. I get another cup of coffee, and we do our weekly thing where I let you ask me a bunch of questions, and I'm here for it, right? I don't know who else is messed up by this time change, but man, it's really jacking me up. I'm not gonna lie. Anyway, friends, let's get started because we got a lot of questions tonight. So a bit of the housekeeping. For those of you joining us for the first time, I'm Daniel Miller, president of the Texas Nationalist Movement, and this is Late Night Coffee Talk. As I said, that time once a week where I take a break from doing work that advances the cause of Texas independence, pour a cup of coffee, and come on here and let you grill me, right? I get to fire up the camera and the microphone, and you get to ask the questions. I don't come in, excuse me, pollen. I typically don't come in with any sort of predetermined thing I want to talk about, although I do actually have one thing tonight. But you guys get to ask your questions, and I get to answer them. So if you're here to watch the monkey dance, congratulations. This is your opportunity. For those of you watching on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell. Additionally, drop your questions in the chat, and super chats are always welcome. They help us keep content rolling and, make sure that we're able to produce videos and educational material and do outreach and do the things necessary to reach the people to make Texas independence a reality. If you're watching on Facebook, you can drop your questions in the comments under this video, and be sure to like and share while you're there. If you're watching on X, do all the X things, right? Retweet. Do they even like repost? Is that what they call it now? I'm having a harder time with the name change of X/Twitter than I am with daylight savings time. Not going to lie. But if you have a question, drop it in the chat on the video. And of course, welcome to our viewers over on Rumble. This is going to be our third coffee talk that we've done on Rumble. So we're so glad that you're joining us over there. We hope to figure out some way, we're having to actually develop it ourselves to get your chat messages over here where we can see it. So for those folks on Rumble, I'm sorry, don't mean to leave you out, but we appreciate you nonetheless. Excuse me. Wow, this is terrible. I don't know if it's smoke from wildfires or dust or whatever, or pollen, but it needs to quit. It needs to stop it. Stone cold dead. All right. Tell you what, let's get down to it. We have got, like I said, we've got a lot. You guys, oh yeah, and I forgot. If you don't do any of those other things, be sure to, there it is on the screen. Email your questions to coffeetalk@thetnm.org. And that comes over here, and more of you, that's what you're doing. You're submitting them. You're pre-submitting them, which is really nice. It always means that we've got a big bushel basket full of questions when we get ready to do this. And so that's where I'm going to go tonight. I'm going to start in the email. And we are going to see. Trying to find out what we covered. Here we go. Okay, Timothy says, after listening to the podcast with your talk with Representative Andy Hopper, excuse me, it seems like the politicians in Austin are no better than the politicians in Washington, D.C. Is it going to take someone like a Texas version of President Trump to replace Governor Abbott and drain the swamp in Austin to actually get a TEXIT referendum done so that Texas can be a free and independent nation? It's a really good question. And let me do this. Pollen. Ugh, terrible. So it's a great question, Timothy. And for those of you who don't know what he's talking about, Timothy said that he watched the most recent episode of the Texas News podcast, which was almost an hour-long interview with State Representative Andy Hopper. Now, he's a Texas First pledge signer. Many of you guys know we actually did a live stream with him, gosh, I don't know, 2 plus years ago, where he talked about some of the wokeness entering into the Texas State Guard. And so, Andy is now a state rep, and he took some time out from what they're doing up there to visit with me for the Texas News podcast. And, I've gotten a lot of comments about that particular episode. And part of it is, first and foremost, just folks that have not been really kind of wired in to the legislature and some of the obstacles that we face on the TEXIT issue, plus so many other issues, just absolute shock. And it did take, some of the stuff took some of the jam out of people's donuts. They're suddenly waking up and realizing we have a dysfunctional legislature. Well, newsflash, folks, if it may be news to you, but it's not been news to us. In fact, we have got a podcast episode that's in production right now. It's going to be a two-parter where we break down the history of this dysfunction in the Texas legislature. We're going to talk about some of the brokenness in the system, and one of the first guests, one of the first people that will be interviewed in this, it'll be essentially, you guys remember Claver Kamau from Raging Elephants. Claver and I will be doing a retrospective. We're going all the way back to when we first met each other. And essentially that's where we met. Was we knew of one another, but we finally came together, became great friends, and bonded over the issue of trying to overcome the dysfunction in the Texas legislature. So just stay tuned for that. We're going to have a lot of people that we're interviewing for that, and it's going to take some time to get it done. So just bear with us. But anyway, that the other people that, because I said there were two sort of responses to the Andy Hopper interview. The other one, interestingly enough, has been from people who latched on to his comment, because I straight asked him. I said, look, there are a lot of people out there that are referring to this as a wasted session. What is your response to that? And his response is pretty much what our response is, which is, if you think about it in short term, if you have short-term thinking, something I talked about in that little book right there, right? I literally have a section called short-term thinking. If you have short-term thinking, then you're going to be absolutely and utterly gutted over this session. I'm going to warn you now. Go ahead and tune up your therapist. Go find some place, some place, and curl up in a fetal position and sing Lullaby Baby or whatever you got to do to assuage yourself. But the bottom line is, if you're short-term thinking, you're going to be, this session is going to absolutely and utterly crush you. And how do I know? Because this isn't the first bad legislative session I've seen. And this won't be the first time that I've seen its impact on people that have short-term thinking. But if you've got a vision for Texas independence and self-government and those things, and it's truly that long-term vision, you understand. I'm not going to go over it again this week and show you the slides, but if you understand that the real goal is independence, and as what any moves we make that direction toward independence are positive steps, and you understand that independence is not going to happen tomorrow. We want it now, right? But independence is not going to happen tomorrow. It's not a singular act. It's a process. Okay. If you understand that, then you begin to view these legislative sessions and measure them against what sort of progress you're making toward the ultimate goal. Is Texas becoming more independent? Are we moving closer to disentangling ourselves from the federal government? And so that's the other response. And Andy kind of echoed those sentiments, and I'll let you go listen to the podcast. I'm not going to review the whole thing, but you're going to want to go watch it. Just like I recommended the podcast episode with Javier, you're definitely going to want to listen to this one from Andy. It was just phenomenal. He shared a lot of the inside baseball that's going on. But to Timothy's point, is it going to take someone like a Texas version of President Trump to replace Governor Abbott and drain the swamp in Austin? There's a big difference here, and it's that Texas constitutionally has what is effectively called a weak governor, and that's on purpose. When the Constitution of 1876 was passed, it was a post-Reconstruction Constitution, and they had been through some governors that acted effectively like dictators and did all that stuff. And so it's effectively a pretty weak position. Where Abbott is strong in his war chest. Look, you got to give credit where credit's due. Politics runs on money. And if you don't believe me, ask any candidate that has ever run for office. It really does. I can remember when, you had that situation. I can't even remember what state it was up in the Northeast. You had a guy spend like $35 and he won like a state Senate seat. And he knocked out the way that they pick their lieutenant governors. They pick it from the president of the Senate, from the Senate members. And basically that's how it went. And, everybody's like, see, you can do it with $35. Like, no, you can't. Lightning doesn't strike everywhere all the time, right? It's pretty random. And that was a random series of events. Okay. But you got to give credit where credit's due. Abbott is the most prolific political fundraiser in Texas history. And you don't have to take that. You don't have to take it from me, right? I mean, he holds the record for receiving the single largest political contribution in Texas history. From a particular person. That accumulated total was over 12 million. I mean, he went in at one point, he had a 20 some odd $1 million war chest. Just go look at the spends. I mean, I'm not going to go through all that again. It's previous episodes of Coffee Talk where I talk about campaign finance and how much money comes from outside of Texas. But he is a prolific fundraiser. I mean, he just is. And so it gives him the ability to go out there and put his thumb on the scales. When he came out and started endorsing in primaries, Rick Perry did it first, started endorsing in primaries. That when Rick Perry did it, it was like earth shattering. Like people were just absolutely aghast. But Greg Abbott kind of came out of the gate doing that sort of thing because he understood that he could leverage campaign finance to get his goals accomplished in the Texas legislature. If these people were effectively beholden to him, whether they wanted it or not, and he could sway those races, then he could put people that were effectively indebted to him in the Texas legislature. And so his power comes not just from being the governor, but from being a prolific fundraiser and being able to shuffle pieces around and get people that are very grateful for his assistance into the Texas legislature. He does not have, as governor, any real direct power to drain the swamp. I mean, he could work on some things with the administrative state. I mean, there's a few things he could do. But the real dysfunction here is in the Texas legislature. And so his power only extends into how much money he can put into those races. And that's really the secret of it. So you could knock Abbott out of the boat, right? You could get somebody to run against him, and I'm going to tell you, they have to be well funded. They're going to have a lot of money to make that happen. But you could take him out, and he could still have his war chest and still get his agenda effectively accomplished. Now there is some merit, there is some benefit to having the title of governor. And it would be nice to have a governor that would go in there and veto legislation and do things more aligned with us, as opposed to what the donors want or what the polls tell them. That would be absolutely lovely. But that's just replacing Abbott's not going to do it. And really part of your question was about actually getting the Texit referendum done. When you're at that level where Abbott is, I've already told you in this conversation what moves Abbott. It's donors and polling. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, that means money, right? In other words, you got to hit him at his donor class. That's where you got to hit him, and polling. So the two things that will move him are money and people. Right. And I'm not saying go buy the governor or raise, but if you're a major fundraising player, in other words, if you're an organization that's well funded, that is out there and can also, advocate for positions in much the way that Abbott does by getting up on TV and radio and all those sorts of things and dropping tons of direct mail pieces, because that's what Abbott's money goes to. If you can play in that territory and you got the poll numbers to prove out, which we do, I mean, I'll get to that actually here in a minute. It's a really good segue into the thing I want to talk about. Then you've got the ability to then move him, because politicians fear one thing and one thing only, and that is not getting reelected. I mean, that's all I can tell you. That is their biggest fear. Why do people spend Why did Dade Phelan spend somewhere between $1.5 to $3 million to save his seat here? Because that's their biggest fear. They got other things. There's some power that they get from that. And, so their biggest fear is not getting reelected, and they will spend or do whatever necessary to make that happen. So, you could replace Abbott. It doesn't hurt, but you could also sway Abbott. You can move him over, because whichever way the wind is blowing, that's where he's going to go. And there's two things that make the wind blow that direction, and that's money and that's people. So that's the reality of it. You can overcome a financial deficit if you've got enough committed people. We know that. We know that from tipping point theory. We know it through political and social movements. You don't necessarily have to have both, being well-funded and have a groundswell of people. But I'm going to tell you, having both doesn't hurt. It's just the reality of it. And some people may throw their hands up and say, well, that's tough. Well, how bad do you want independence? How bad do you want it? I mean, that's ultimately the question. So thank you for that question, Timothy. And I'm going to use that to segue into something I want to talk about, which was, I saw this just right before we came on the live stream. But Washington Examiner has an article out. Let me see if I can blow that up for you. Yeah, you guys should be able to see that now. But anyway, the headline, pretty straightforward. Younger voters and minorities foretell the breakup of the United States, right? So this was published, literally just a few hours ago. So apparently, if you read through Zogby's strategies, which you guys know Zogby's a pollster, one of the things that they have been polling pretty extensively since the election, and this one in particular deals with, this particular poll deals with the growing divides that are happening in the United States. So I will tell you, this right here really bolstered my spirits. And the reason being is, all these people that predicted, oh, Trump won, so nobody's going to want to break up anymore. Well, that's a bunch of crap. It's a bunch of crap, right? It's what we said about the TEXIT situation. If you think TEXIT goes away because Trump gets elected, you have no idea what this is about. You don't have a clue. Now, if you're a short-term thinker, that may be where it is, or if you carry around a drill cup, maybe that's something that you would think. But in reality, that's not what the data shows, right? We already have experience with Trump's first term. They're going, well, it was his first term. He didn't get to do a lot. Well, guess what? The other podcast episode that we're prepping to get ready to do deals with exactly how many actions the Trump administration has taken that the federal courts are blocking. And we're going to go through the list. And the reason we haven't been able to get it produced yet is because every day a brand spanking new federal judge comes out of the woodwork and says, no. And you can say, well, that's against the Constitution. They're not supposed to do that. They're going to impeach them. It's still happening, though, right? Just because, and we've said this all along, just because you change the resident, just because somebody new gets their gas bill at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue does not mean the federal government is changed in any meaningful way. Right? The people that are cheering on what's happening right now are the people that are cheering on somebody taking a wrecking ball to a dysfunctional and broken federal system. That's what we've got that's worth cheering about. That's why everybody's so happy, because the federal government, who's been sticking it to all of us for all these years, is finally getting a dose of their own medicine. And you know what? All these people crying. I saw some dude from the Federal Trade Commission on X today crying, I got fired. I got illegally fired by President Trump. Well, cry me a river. How many people here in Texas have lost their jobs? How many people have lost their lives because of how broken and dysfunctional the federal government is? That number is too many to count. So why don't you just take your tears and put them in a little shot glass and sit there and nourish yourself on it so you don't dehydrate? Because none of us out here give a crap. We don't care. We've had enough of you not giving a crap about us and taking our tax money and sitting there twiddling your thumbs all day and money going here and there and everywhere else around the world. And we still got people sleeping on the streets here. We got people here that are ostensibly middle class in Texas that cannot put food on their table and cannot put gas in their gas tanks. You see, it's people like us at the TNM. That's something we care about. That's why we're fighting so hard to be free from the federal government. And you got these boo-hoo whinies on the, these thumb suckers on social media whining and crying because their gravy train came to an end. So what? I don't give a crap. And I don't think anybody else here does either. You know what? Go find a job in the prep, start a business, and then have to jump through and wrestle with all that red tape you people put on all the rest of us for decades upon decades. See how you like it. Maybe if you got to live out here amongst us plebes for a while, then you'll understand why we're all so upset. Maybe, just maybe. Maybe. But I digress. The Zogby poll, this is what it found. Here's first sentence. As politics increasingly divides America and the public, there appears to be a growing expectation that states will make moves to break away from the United States. And then I take exception with this, the first step in a second civil war. No, it's not. It doesn't have to be, right? And without these nut jobs running everything in the civil service in Washington, D.C., it probably won't be, right? But that's not the first step in a second civil war. That is a bridge too far. Stop jumping to conclusions. It doesn't have to be. States can decide that they want to withdraw, and we do it in an orderly manner, and we say, okay, here's the deal. You guys don't shoot at us, and we won't let you freeze next winter, right? How about that one? But the numbers were pretty doggone interesting because it says new. So now again, this is going to be one of those I get to say I told you so moments for people out there. New data shared with Secrets from John Zogby Strategies found that younger voters, Hispanics, and Black voters believe that so-called secession is likely. I mean, so I want you to go back and I want you to think about all the times that the media called us, because we secession, the S word, which technically this isn't, but how they always said, no, it's only old white people, old white men that believe in that. And if I had a nickel for every time that some media outlet or some hack on the other side of this equation said that kind of crap, then we would never have to raise another dime for this organization. We'd be flush. I'd be Scrooge McDuck swimming in a room full of gold coins, right? But that's the kind of crap that they say. And what we've always said is, what's funny is we run the numbers on registered supporters in the TNM, and the demographics of the TNM more closely reflect the demographics of Texas as a whole than either major political party. And they're like, bull crap. How come you don't have young people at your meetings? Because young people don't go to meetings. They don't care about going to Golden Corral and getting the free food. Young people don't care about eat, meet, greet, retreat. We have meetings like that because there are some people that like that. That's an effective way to get things done. But they're organizing online. They're organizing digitally. I mean, that's what happens. And so, they throw all these really ridiculous arguments in, yet here it is. Zogby Strategies does this poll, and guess what they did? They proved us right. It reinforces exactly what we have been saying for years. Look at this. Pollster Jeremy Zogby's latest survey found that 41% of younger voters, 18 to 29, believe secession is likely, as do 39% of Black voters and 51% of Hispanics. Zogby said that expectations of a national divorce by young voters are troubling. Oh no. Those expectations are so troubling. Here's his quote. This is key because this is the future of the electorate. You don't say. You don't say. What this does to me is tells me that's cool. I mean, I'm not going to go out and get hit by a bus tonight. But if so, then so what? It'll happen. We want it to happen the right way, which is why we work so hard to make it happen. the right way. But we've got, I mean, think about what that demographic looks like moving forward. You know, that age group, the younger voters, people have always said it'll die off when the boomer, TEXIT will die off when the boomers die off. No, it won't. No, it won't. Something we had previous polls tell us that honestly, the demographic might skew a little bit older here and there, but by and large, as a whole, Texas supporters are more representative of Texas as a whole than either major political party. What does that mean? That means for us Texas nationalists, that means the future belongs to us. That means we're going to win. That means ultimate victory for us, because this shows you right here there is zero faith whatsoever that the federal system can be reformed. Zero. I mean, I say zero. It's more than zero. Okay, let's be honest. There is a more than zero amount of faith that the federal government can be fixed. But there is also more than a 0% number of people that believe the earth is flat. Okay, so let's just be real about it. But these numbers, absolutely. I mean, people use the term bombshell all the time, way too much. It's pretty hyperbolic. But this is bombshell territory when you think about it. All these people out there, all I could think about as I was reading this, and I'm thinking about all these people out there wringing their hands about, we're having a hard time right now. I just don't know if we need Texas independence. Well, guess what? The people that are going to have to live with this future are looking at it like, we got to make some moves right now while we can, because this federal system, the way that people are at each other's throats and how different the states are from one another and how different all of them are from Washington, D.C., everyone with any sense knows, and any vision toward the future knows that this is an untenable situation. It cannot last. It can't last. The results come as other polls show growing expectations among voters of a politically driven civil war, as the Republican Party is winning fast-growing support from younger Black and Hispanic voters. Now, I said this, and I think it was on the last Coffee Talk, and I made I did an interview on the Defiance Daily podcast, and I've said it several times since the election, that I believe at this very moment we are closer to a civil war than we were before the election. And I'm not predicting it. I'm not calling for it. What I'm saying is that the election did not do anything to address the growing polarization. Neither camp, not that there are two camps, but neither camp in the federal elections was going to satisfy the other one with a candidate. Kamala Harris on one side, Donald Trump on the other. It was going to be bad. I mean, look, we're talking about 18 months worth of polling leading up to the election, where 40+% of Americans, whatever that means, right? Because I've been critical of definitions and polling before, but 40% said that the United States was headed for a civil war in the next 10 years. And I believe those numbers are only growing. And here you're seeing these numbers being reflective of what's happening on the national divorce front. We're talking, I mean, here they're framing. The new numbers also come against a backdrop of violence on the left against Trump's team, notably Tesla founder Elon Musk. The new Zogby data bolsters those surveys and feeds into campaigns by some, such as Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, for a national divorce into red and blue states. We've already addressed that, right? It's not the United Political Parties of America. It's the United States of America, and it's not about red state versus blue state, because I can tell you right now, a Texas Republican and a Massachusetts Republican are not the same thing. Just like a California Democrat and a Texas Democrat are not the same thing. And so when people keep talking about this national divorce in the red states and blue states, that's not how the Union was founded. The Union is founded on independent sovereign states. They came together to delegate a few certain functions to the federal system. Each state should be having the same conversation that we in Texas are having right now, asking themselves whether or not they would join the union if they were an independent nation right now, whether they would give up that control. That's the conversation that needs to be happening all over the place. Every single state. If you go back into the Texas News podcast archives, you go look at the episode. I think it's called "Is Your State Is Your State Leaving the Union?" I can't remember what the title of it is, but go listen to that podcast. Go watch it. It's on YouTube. It's on Spotify. It's on Apple Podcasts. But go watch it, and I break down where the support for independence is for the states. And if I remember correctly, at that time, based off of that survey data, unskewed, as proven by I think it's the Independent California Institute, basically ran a poll simultaneously, both using YouGov with a change of the question, and got radically different results on their poll than the other one did, just by asking the question the right way. All right. So you could see that the poll that was commissioned through YouGov had a 25% compression on average of the results. So basically, by asking the question in the way that they did, they basically docked pro-independence by 25%. So if you adjust that for the correct question, what do you get? Well, you got about 24, 25 states that have probably enough on a given day of their electorate that if they had a referendum on exiting the union, it would come out yes. That's just the reality of it. So anyway, this gets down to what we've been talking about, right? He said back in 2023 on the same thing, he says, when tracking these numbers over time, it becomes clear a sizable portion of the American public keeps a plan B in case all else fails. Guys, I hate to tell you this, but this is not people's plan B anymore. They're looking for the escape boats. They're tired of bailing water on the Titanic, and they understand that if they wait around too long, this joker's going to be at the bottom of the North Atlantic, and James Cameron's going to be looking for it with a little mini sub, right? I mean, that's what's going to happen. But what he said was people are basically living in alternative realities. Yeah, that's called self-government. Every state lives in an alternative reality, an alternate reality, in that they have a way they want to govern themselves. We have a way we want to govern ourselves. These people over here have a way they want to govern themselves. And because we're in this federal system, not a single one of us gets to govern ourselves the way that we want to. I mean, it is, as we have said time and time again, the federal motto is one size fits none. It's long past time. Long past time. And I got to tell you, these numbers right here, those numbers just absolutely make my heart sing. They do, because not only is it validation for things that we have said for a long time, but it tells you in the right here and right now that not a dadgum thing has changed for us. Only support for this has gotten better. It's only growing. And so this is the direction we need to go. So yeah, so to go back to even Timothy's question about this dysfunction. Look, if you're short-term thinking kind of person, you're probably going to want to turn this off because it's not going to interest you, because it has something to do with things we need to do after tomorrow, right? But here's the bottom line. You need to be looking at a couple of things. Number one, that piece of legislation that Representative Hopper filed, right? It's weird calling it Representative Hopper, but you need to look at that piece of legislation that he filed. There's an article about it on the TNM News site. Go look it up, right? But it is essentially a piece of the Texas Independence Referendum Act that would have gone after the referendum, stuck at the beginning, right? It lays out everything we need. It's prudent. It moves us toward independence, along with a bunch of other bills, right? That I'm not going to go through all of them tonight. But it lays a path forward to move us toward. And while that's what we're going to be limited to this legislative session because of the dysfunction, we got a pretty good chance of maybe getting some of that shoved across the finish line. And I'm pretty happy about that, right? But where your sights need to be set is what's going to happen come November, when it's time for people to file for office, to run for office, and what's going to happen in those primaries the following March. Because if you want to take control of your Texas legislature and you want a referendum on Texas independence and you want to push this ball further and further down the road to get and win a referendum and secure our independence, then you got to throw the bums out. I mean, I've said this cycle after cycle, and I just want it to sink in with people. I want it to just permeate every cell of your body. If you don't like the way you are being represented, then you got to change the person that is representing you. If you've got a representative that folds like Superman on Laundry Day on issues of the state versus the feds, or, you know, they turn into one of those thumb suckers or they get upset when you even bring up the idea that Texans should be able to have a vote on independence, then you got the wrong person. Because I'm guessing if you're here, you want those things. So you got the wrong person. So what does that mean you got to do? That means you got to plug in. That means you got to support the efforts that we're doing. I mean, we got pledge signers signing the pledge, municipal candidates. We've already got another state rep candidate. You know, Don Huffines is back on the map, right? He's previous pledge signer who's running for comptroller now. Guys, this train is moving full speed ahead, right? And so, you know, you got to make a choice. You got to make some decisions. The battle is commenced. We are engaged in battle. Are you going to be a part of it or are you not? I mean, that's just really what it comes down to. And I'm going to tell you, I am encouraged by the number of people that are just absolutely on fire. They understand that this is our window of opportunity to make massive changes in how we are represented here in Texas. As we're watching the Doge cuts hit at the federal level, people are, you know, watching Texas representatives hijack the Doge concept and not Doge. Instead, grow government, right? And make government more dysfunctional and put more regulations and do all those crazy. I mean, some of the legislation coming out of Austin this session, I've never seen anything like it. And some of this legislation from people that are supposedly Republicans, it's insanity. I mean, it's absolutely maddening to see some of this crap they're throwing out there. And they're trying to hijack the reform aspect of it and say, well, you know, we're all about Doge too. You know, Doge is cool, and so are we. You know, I mean, that's how they're acting. Like, no, you're a nerd. You're an absolute idiot. You know, because you think we're buying this crap and we're not. At least I'm not. And I hope that you're not either, right? Okay, guys, sorry about that. Soapboxing it. Let's take one from the chat. All right. Danny, I see your question. You pretty much asked the same thing last week, and I just will refer you back to last week's episode. Okay. Let's go over here. Okay, yeah, this is good. Okay, this is from Franklin. My question is simple. What steps is Texas taking to create a legal tender currency like goldback and silverback and avoid digital currencies which will be used to enslave freedom-loving people? You know, we've talked about this, and I'll tell you, Franklin, I'm not your monetary policy guy, but I can tell you that Texas has been making steps that direction. So last session and this session, you're getting two bills. One you're not going to like because it deals with what is effectively a gold-backed digital currency, which is actually super cool if you could get away from the stink on the digital part and realize that even most banking transactions are digital now. But you know, it's essentially gold. And you know, we've obviously got the Texas Gold Depository, but in addition to that, there is a bill, a constitutional amendment that will give Texans the ability to use whatever money they want to transact with, and that would be gold, silver, digital, whatever it is, but it would enshrine that as a right in the Texas Bill of Rights, and that would be extraordinarily useful. So look, there are a lot of proposals out there on how to handle the currency thing, but ultimately what you got to take from it is that Texas is about this far from being able to float its own currency. So when people talk about, well, when you guys get independent, you're going to have your own currency. That's not a problem. You know, if we're talking about gaps that we have to jump over to get from where we are to where we need to be as a self-governing independent nation, that gap is less like a ditch and more like a crack in the sidewalk. So there we go. Thank you for your question, Franklin. Hey, real quick, I know I ranted a little bit longer than I was supposed to, but a reminder, if you have a question, drop it in the chat. If you're on YouTube, in the comments under the video, on Facebook. If you're on X, drop it in the chat on the video. You can also still send them in. The address will be there at the bottom, coffeetalk@thetnm.org. Okay, this is fun. Oh man, I cannot read all of this. This is from Chris. And I cannot read this entire thing. It's not a question. It is a research paper. But I will read it, I promise. But anyway, I think the question is the question is actually in the subject. How do we convince Texas conservative legislators TEXIT is still a necessity even with Trump being in office? I can tell you that the conversations that we have had with some of the legislators, their concern is not about the lack of necessity. The concern that they have is the lack of preparation and the dysfunction in the Texas legislature that would block us from putting it to a vote of the people. That's the big concern. And so, you know, additional preparedness, AKA measure twice, cut once, and you know, clearing out this blockage to make the path. I mean, you know, you're outnumbered. I mean, let's just look at this. We had one last session, one in the Texas legislature, one, okay, and it was barely one because, you know, he wound up getting expelled from the Texas legislature, which was pretty doggone historic. I mean, we were not doing really great. That the election before that was a bloodbath. You know, we're coming in with 10. I'm going to tell you what we need. We need to replace 10 to 20 more. That's just where we're at. If you're upset about what happened with the speaker's race, and you have every right to be, understand that that was muscled by a group that was fairly small, but the muscle was strong with them. The muscle and the hustle. So you put in another 10 to 20, like the 10 that we've got in right now, and you're going to get this thing done. It's just the reality of it. But look, Chris, I'll go back and read that again. I promise. Okay, let's see what we got here. I'm so glad so many of you guys are using the email tonight. That's nice. Sometimes the email box feels lonely. Okay, so here's a fun one. Every day we see how foreign influence and alliance has weakened the United States. How can TNM guarantee that our government stays without influence or is indebted into another power like Israel, Russia, China, and Mexico? What is your personal relationship with Israel, and how do we know your leadership is also not compromised? Okay, so let me just take it one question at a time. The TNM's job is watchdog, but ultimately that the responsibility for seeing that our government stays out of entangling foreign alliances is not the TNM's. That's not our responsibility. Our responsibility is to organize people to achieve, you know, I mean, go look at our mission, right? To secure and protect the political, cultural, and economic independence of the nation of Texas. Okay. So that's the role the TNM plays in this equation. Ultimately, the people are the arbiters of what this government does. And so it will be the people. Now, we provide a platform to organize, to achieve, and secure Texas independence, which means being free from foreign entangling alliances. Okay. So, you know, good news there, right? but the responsibility is not ours. I'm not taking exception with the content of the question. I'm just taking exception with the fact that it's how can TNM guarantee? Well, we're going to continue to do what we do now. Our role after winning a TEXIT vote does not end. Look at the mission. The mission's pretty clear about what the role of the organization is, and so that's why we're not the TEXIT campaign. We're the Texas Nationalist Movement with a mission to secure and protect the political, cultural, and economic independence of the nation of Texas, right? So our role doesn't go away. We're going to do the same job forever, because just as soon as you get independence, there's going to be somebody out there wanting to take it away, wanting to make you dependent or entangle you in something that you don't need to be in. And we've seen it time and time again. That's why I always rail against some of these Scotland independence campaigners, or some of the campaigners in Catalonia who say, we want to exit, in Scotland's case, we want to exit the United Kingdom and be an independent nation and turn around as our first act to join the European Union. It's kind of what Catalonia said. It's like, why would you fight so hard to get your independence only to pitch the keys to somebody else? I'm not here to exchange chains. I'm not here to get a different color set of chains, right? Or longer ones or shorter ones. I'm here to break chains. I'm here for Texas to stand as a self-governing independent nation among nations. I have no interest in, and neither does the organization, in getting in these further entangling alliances. Why I always kind of lose my crap on these things when people go, what Texas needs to do is leave with the other states of the South, or like the other red states. It's like, that's not how this works. That's not it. And I'm never going to be for that. I will never in my entire life support Texas being part of another absolute political and economic union. It's immoral, right? I mean, we've seen where it happens. Why in the world would we ever want Texas to be in that same boat? Well, we wouldn't. At least if we're smart, we wouldn't. But again, on the other side of this, I'm one person. I don't get to pick and choose that, right? But it's up to all of us collectively together to make sure that we not only secure Texas independence, but we protect it. Now, to your other point, what is your personal relationship with Israel? I have no personal relationship with Israel. Anybody who knows me knows that I have effectively been married to Texas independence since August 24th, 1996. This is what I do, and I don't care who it hair lips. I don't care. I don't care who it upsets. And so my focus is Texas becoming a self-governing independent nation and maintaining that independence, which, as I have pretty expressly said a moment ago, does not involve any sort of entangling foreign alliances. And so, to your question, what's your personal relationship with Israel? My personal relationship with Israel is the same relationship that I have with Argentina or Canada or Ghana, or pick it. They are foreign to me, right? Kind of the same relationship that I have with Mississippi or Michigan or any of those other places, right? They are not Texas. It's kind of like that shirt you see, that graphic that's got Texas, and it says Texas, and then everything else is marked not Texas. Well, guess where my focus is? And because Texas is my focus, I don't think about that other crap. So many of you guys get on social media and you yeah all the time about whatever it is. If it's Israel Palestine, or if it's some this stuff between Ukraine and Russia, and I'm saying not that I don't have maybe a personal opinion on these things, or but that's not my focus. I don't have enough time in the day to go get mixed up in other people's crap. I'm trying to make Texas independent. I don't know what some of these other people are doing. Well, I know what they're doing. They're getting money off of engagement on X. That's what a lot of that is. But I don't have time for any of that other stuff. So you're like, how do we know your leadership is also not compromised? Go look at the fact of what I just said. I've literally been married to this issue since August 24th, 1996. I have paid a wicked price personally to put Texas independence above everything else in my life. Everything else. Well, let me tell you a little short story. People that are compromised, they don't go as hard in the paint as I do. They don't. You guys know everything there is to know about me. I'm about as transparent as you could possibly get, and I'm about as straight with you. But all I can tell you is, if you're concerned about that, then all you got to do is just watch my smoke. If you're concerned, okay. One day maybe we'll have that conversation, all of us, and I will tell you how wicked the price has been that has been paid to keep us, not just to keep this issue advancing, but just to keep it alive. Maybe one day we'll have that conversation. I'll tell those stories. Now, I have refrained for many years, and Kara will tell you this. I've refrained for many years from talking about these things, because I was, my fear was it would scare the crap out of people. They would run for the hills if they heard the price that was paid in those very early days, and continues to be paid to some extent, right? That people would run from the hills. Look, you guys are moving toward Texas independence on a paved road, compared to what we had to do, which was basically hack it through the jungle. We had to hack a little path through the jungle to get you to this paved road. And I think sometimes about people that talk about how hard it is now. I'm like, man, you just don't know hard. You just don't know. You don't know. You don't understand hard. And God is good. And as such, you probably won't have to. But sometimes people pay the consequences for their choices. And so you might. Thank you for your question, Alejandro. I do appreciate it, sir. Okay, let's go over here and see what we got. Oh yeah, we got some good ones. Okay, so Deline asks, as far as our own military defense, how well is Texas prepared? Not as well as I would like. That's me personally. I think from a policy standpoint, a policy and advocacy standpoint in the TNM, I would say that the TNM doesn't believe we're as prepared as we need to be either. Look, Texas has a 3-branch military, but too much of the focus is on the National Guard, whose command is bifurcated. They can be called into federal service. The Texas State Guard cannot. And so we have advocated in the past for a massive expansion of the Texas State Guard and funding, and essentially shifting the focus over to the Texas State Guard, fully militarizing them. This was the thing we have advocated for in relation to the border, which was when, the Biden administration and administrations previous wouldn't do anything about the border. We've advocated for full militarization of the State Guard and placing them on the border, opening up enlistment, shifting all National Guard funding to the State Guard, and using that as the building block. But understand, for Texas independence, the Texas Military Department is a good start, but it's only a start, right? There are some things that Texas will have to do, but at least we have the framework to build off of. If I were grading these things by gaps that we need to jump over, I mentioned the currency is kind of like a crack in the sidewalk. The military one, in my mind, is a bit I'm not going to say it's the Grand Canyon, but it's bigger than a ditch, and it's a heck of a gap that we have to jump over, and it will take legislative will to make it happen. Right now, the legislature is absolutely too engrossed in a bunch of nonsense bull crap and not thinking about the future, right? I mean, they're not thinking about the future. So, how well are we prepared? I mean, we could get there. But it would be better if we did it consciously on our own timeline than being forced to do it under duress and extraordinary circumstances. So anyway, Delane, thank you so much for your question. Okay, let's get down to this. Okay, Bishop David asked, do you think that Pam Bondi and the rest of the Trump administration would be any easier to work out a separation than a liberal one? I will tell you, I don't know the answer to that. There are some people who believe that Trump would be easier to deal with in this regard. And they point to things like the conversations over Greenland's independence and the discussion, this draft EO that's circulating related to Puerto Rico. But I don't see any coherent um, acknowledgement of the right of self-determination, right? So, we have that article on the site. We had Trump's joint address to Congress where he talked about acknowledging Greenland's right of self-determination. So, boom, that's a discrete package. That's a good thing. And then he says the United States would welcome you, aka he's pushing, talking the Greenland statehood thing. Then over here you got this other executive order that's been circulating. It's a draft. Don't know, if the Trump administration is in favor of it or against it. I really don't know. But talking about kicking Puerto Rico loose and saving us about $700 billion over a 50-year period, whatever. Okay. I still haven't seen a coherent strategy in relation to this, especially when you have Secretary of State Marco Rubio trying to essentially block a self-determination movement in the Balkans. So I would say that there are some mixed signals. So I don't know where they would stand. I really don't. I think that question will be a lot easier to answer right before the midterms, or maybe right after. That will tell you everything you need to know. Either way, when the people of Texas speak, it doesn't matter what they say in Washington, D.C. It's going to be a matter of negotiating and horse trading and doing what we can to make the separation as amicable and non-destabilizing as possible. Anyway, thank you for that question, Bishop David. I appreciate that. Okay, well, guess what, friends? That looks like it is a wrap. Let me just check over here one more time in the bin because I really have got to get back to work. I've got a ton of stuff I got to get done. Anyway, yeah, I think we're good. You guys, anybody who had any questions that have already been answered have already been directed other places, so I don't have to take those. Thank you all very much. Cool. All right. Well, then let's do this. Let me remind you as we get ready to sign off, if you have not already registered your support, head over there and do so right now. Go to tnm.me/vote and pledge your support today. Become one of us in the TNM. Join the movement. Let's make Texas an independent nation again. Additionally, if you are already registered, hey, look, guys, I still hear from people all the time say, how come I don't get your emails? I don't see you on social media. We're squelched all over the place, right? Our emails are probably going straight into your spam folder, right? And that's not because we're spamming. It's just what the algorithm dictates. I know people, my wife doesn't even see my posts on X. Okay. So we know for a fact that, there are issues. We hear it from people. So look, that's why we have the TNM mobile app. And you need to go download it today. Head over to tnm.me/app and download the thing. That way we can communicate with one another. You can communicate with one another. And we don't have to worry about big tech censorship, which is still contrary to the optimistic prognostications of those who were very loud when Elon Musk bought X. The big tech censorship regime is still in full force and effect. So head over to tnm.me/app, download the mobile app today. And look, if you like what we're doing, if you want to see us advance, if you're not one of those short-term thinkers, if you're one of those people that say, hey, I get it. I want independence. I want it. I understand that is the answer. That is the solution. This is something we have to do, and we can't wait to do it. We got to take the steps to get it done, right? Then head over to donate.tnm.me and make a contribution today. Look, $5, $10, $20, whatever it is. Look, I talked at the very beginning about how Abbott is a powerhouse because he has a war chest. You want Texas nationalism to be a powerhouse, then help us build the war chest. You can do that at donate.tnm.me. And you know what? That's a wrap, my friends. So look, I want to thank you guys so much once again for joining me for a late night coffee talk. It was a lot of talk, not enough coffee. Or some of you may think that I had too much. I don't know. Just depends on your viewpoint on how tall my soapbox was tonight. Anyway, look, that being said, I want to leave you with the words I leave you with every time we're together. They're not my words. They're the words of Sam Houston when he said that Texas will again lift its head and stand among the nations. I believe that time is now, and the question is, will you stand with her? Good night, everyone.